Next is to consider the award of the contract for the Spongy Moth Tree Survey, request for proposals. We have Olivia.
Hello, I do not have a presentation.
You broke her.
On October 25th, 2021, there's an error in my memo. The Board of Trustees elected to cancel our contract with National Gypsy Moth Management Group, who had been the contractor managing our Gypsy Moth program since the early 1990s. And part of that decision was based on Oakland County allocating funds for a program. And I'll just really clarify, it used to be called Gypsy Moth, it's now renamed Spongy Moth. So there's references to both, but it is now referred to as Spongy Moth. That program developed by the county is for treatment. Bloomfield Township was able to receive funding for treatment. It was about just over $1,000. It was a 50-50 match required. And the township's treatment is ground-based spraying. So it's the same product used when there's aerial spraying from airplanes, but with ground-based spraying, it's spraying an individual tree from a truck mounted on the ground. It's still the same product, and the selected trees are based on, in the past, the survey done by our previous consultant in the fall. And so the survey's done on the fall, areas are surveyed by the consultant that we used to contract with, and then a treatment program recommended by them for the spring. So with the cancellation of that contract, in order to develop select areas necessary for treatment in the future, we still need to do a fall survey. And the township does not have in-house resources to perform this work. So with that in mind, the EESD put out a proposal or a request for proposals for this service. And it was an open-ended proposal since this type of program is not something we've done in-house, so we were looking to get responses on how different consultants or contractors would recommend how to proceed with this. So we did take proposals on July 27th. Unfortunately, and in line with the times, we only received one proposal for response. However, after reviewing the one proposal internally with multiple people from multiple departments, their proposal does appear to address all of the items that were in the RFP and also address our request to provide information with a fall survey and then provide recommendations to the township. And this proposal was just for trees on township-owned properties or trees in the medians of Woodward and Telegraph, or trees in the right-of-way. So it eliminates trees on private properties, which was included in the past contract as well. So the contractor that submitted a response was the Davie Resource Group. They are associated with Davie Tree Program, who Davie Tree Program has been the contractor that we've engaged with ground-based spraying in the past. But again, in the past, our consultant that we used to contract would tell us what sites needed spraying based on their survey that they did, and we would just simply relay back to Davie Tree, hey, we need these trees sprayed within this time frame. So Davie Resource Group that now would provide that survey service for the township. And this is just a one-year request that we did. Just again, if it's something that the board wanted to, either it could be an annual contract or we could go out every year. But this work was just for the survey to perform this fall, provide recommendations to the township for treatment activities. Well, first, I'm sorry, select the locations for survey based on past data from our previous consultants and the reports, develop a survey program, perform the survey, then come back to us with recommended treatment. And then also developing informational brochure for our residents. So that's the scope of the request that we made for proposals. The response from Davie Resource Group was for this services, and the proposal was attached to the memo, is for $19,905. The terms and conditions requested by Davie by the Davie Resource Group have not been reviewed by the township attorney, but should the board choose to proceed with this, they would be prior to Supervisor Wall signing. However, we did have conversations with respect to one condition that Davie Resource Group identified in their response, and it has to do with the insurance. The township, we provide in the RFP the township resolution for insurance requirements. Davie Resource Group responded that they do not provide insurance on a per-project basis. And instead they provide a total of $5 million commercial general liability as well as $5 million auto liability. So I reached out to our accounting department, and they reached out to MMRMA, I think, and their response was that if the board, they had no objection to this variance from the insurance due to the timing of their insurance renewal. So basically, they have a policy for $5 million. It's being renewed this September. So it's at the beginning of when this money's available in the bucket. So if there was an issue, that bucket is full versus this being conducted at the end of their one-year period. So that the response is included in the memo as well. So as always, the ESD is recommending proceeding with this project. The suggested motion is move to approve the bid and award the contract for the 2022 Gypsy Moth Tree Survey to Davie Resource Group in the amount of $19,905. And the Township EESD shall have the authority to approve up to 10% increase to said contract amount based on conditions discovered in the field if said conditions are confirmed by the Township EESD. And should any additional funding be needed to complete the project, or conditions be discovered in the field increase the contract cost above 10%, the EESD shall obtain approval by the township supervisor prior to issuing approval of said contract amount. And this scope of work does not include performing treatment. It includes the survey and making the recommendations, as well as a brochure for public information.
Marcia. I'm not always the bad guy, Marcia. We got to thank you for this one.
So, thank you, Olivia, for your presentation, and I want to thank our County Commissioner Gershenson for helping and really establishing a program with Oakland County to look at gypsy moth as a county issue, not just as a local issue. And the county, I think last year, Marcia, it was $250,000, and that may be the first time that they've
It was the first time.
dealt with
And
this.
it happened a lot because your township board requested it, and so there were two driving communities, and you were one of them. And so the reason that I wanted to state tonight for this discussion is that we did a survey after our first round, and the results that we got back from Bloomfield Township were that you would like more public education, marketing activities, administration, and service costs, which you were approximating at around $2,000. So we are now doing a new resolution. We want to hear from the communities. What is it you want? Because we didn't spend half of what we had allocated. There's more money available. Only certain communities are responding. So this would be a time where if you have any ideas, to put them in writing and to get them to me. Like, I don't know that if you go ahead with this contract, maybe some of those dollars would be reimbursable. And certainly the survey costs were brought up to me, that maybe that's something that we could really help in. So I would never want to stop you from going ahead with whatever contracts you have, understanding that I'll look into whether or not they can be reimbursed. And this committee is meeting in the next 2 weeks, so I'll have an answer to you. But I would love you to get to me exactly what you think would really help lower your costs, because that was the whole purpose of the grant.
And really, you know, it's our costs, and I think all of our neighboring communities. So again, to your credit, it's really a county issue. We're just a function of the greater part. And so hopefully what we're doing in other communities collectively will get closer to dealing with this as an issue. And it seems like it's being handled, but I think collectively we'd be far more effective.
We
So
were
thank you.
surprised at the small response that we got. I think there were only 7 communities that participated. Because, like you said, it is a countywide issue.
I think part of that, I know we were so happy you were willing to join on this fight too. I know when Brian reached out to you, you jumped on it right away. We were very happy about that. I know the fellow township supervisors, when we met with the agency that was working a lot with this, the biggest issue is the survey cost is the biggest cost. So we would love it if that was, and the other was that education. We just don't have.
The education is
just
pretty
to make
much
the
a no-brainer.
videos and- Yeah,
What is the survey? What's the approximate survey cost, do you know?
20,000.
Do they break it down?
It's basically what this
Yeah, this
plan is
contract.
for, which
It's
is
just a survey, so it's
1,000,
19,000.
The survey and recommendation, and then a informational brochure. So the
Right.
majority is performing the work.
Yeah.
even the informational brochure, it's the same information. So I mean, even if the county or Michigan State Extension, whomever you have contract, can do that and just supply us that information.
Right.
It's just less than
Give
we
it
have
out.
So it
to.
seems very doable, so I'll look into it from my side, but if you could just send me a written memo on exactly what you think would help, and maybe even the approximate cost, because many communities got over $20,000. So, okay?
Thank you.
Thank you.
So does anyone have questions for Olivia?
So are we going to wait to approve this until we hear back or no?
I wouldn't.
We
Okay.
can always submit for reimbursement if they, because it was originally not something that you could apply for.
I do, regarding the schedule, since they do provide a schedule on page 9, and when we released the RFP, we did have dates in there because the survey does have to be performed during a certain time of the year. And so in order to maximize that time, we wanted to get this RFP out early. I feel like it's late, but I'm always like a 3-month early type person. So, but their scope of their deliverable is developing the survey program, which includes the locations that we've used in the past, looking at trends, looking at areas in the past that were higher than other areas, so then they can limit the locations that should be focused on. And that would be September, October, and then doing the survey October, November, and then providing the report November, December, and we required the final report in January along with the information. So that's kind of the time frame. If the board wanted to wait, we don't want to miss that window if the board wanted to proceed with performing a survey to begin with. Because each year, we may have, the areas that we treated this year may not be the areas that need treating next year.
I have one question. So now we're just doing township, the survey in the township areas, whereas we had done it everywhere. So in terms of our education to the residents, for them to know what to look for, to try and figure it out, report it, what is their support system, or are they totally on their own to hire someone to come and spray if they think they have like an infestation on their property?
Yeah, so that was the process. Even though the previous contract included trees on private property, if we received a call from a resident that asked, is this spongy moth on my tree? The recommendation was always that they needed to engage the services of a professional company. The contract that we had with National Gypsy Moth Management Group was just for the 500 some plots or the 500 some locations that were part of the survey. So anything outside of that was totally up to the property owner.
It would kind of fall on, like, for example, we had a moth infestation, different type, but it took over our bushes, and we had to, we had to pay for that. It's your own personal maintenance.
Right, I was just looking for how is it different, compared to last year?
Well, education-wise, you are going to do something different where if there's a hot spot and we do have education pieces available, we were going to mail them to surrounding areas, warning them they were in a hot spot.
So, yes, in the past, under the past contract, we just started maybe 2 or 3 years ago, when we got the results from our contractor at the time that had areas of high counts, we sent letters to the adjacent surrounding property owners notifying them that they may want to engage the services of a professional to look at their property. Because again, the survey done by our previous contractor, as well as the survey proposed here, is looking at specific trees, not necessarily every tree in the subdivision. So we felt it was worthwhile, if we knew of areas from our previous contractor that they deemed needing some sort of additional treatment, we reached out to the adjoining properties via a letter letting them know. We didn't blame anybody, we said somebody in your area.
Yeah, so I had a question. So how much do we spend on the spraying?
This year, we spent $2,000.
So we spent 20 on the survey and 2 on the spraying.
Yes. But again, it's a survey, so our previous contract with National Gypsy Moth Management Group was $178,000. That included the survey, the final report, and they had 2 criteria for treatment. The majority of the treatment by them was applying a natural fungus at the base of the trees that had egg masses within a certain amount of, I don't remember the number, but within a certain amount. That was all part of that scope of work. And then any trees that the surveyor that the National Gypsy Moth Management Group said were above a certain number of egg masses, they recommended ground-based spraying, which was a separate contract outside of what National Gypsy Moth Management Group provided. So in the past, we'd always pay separate for the recommended ground-based spraying.
So because I remember the contract being at least $150,000. So basically, we're getting something similar for less than 20.
But much less treatment.
Much less
treatment. And much smaller area, because the previous survey was over 500 plots on all different types of property. So we slimmed down the area of focus, and I believe the product that was used in the past for treating the bulk of the trees is a proprietary product owned by the contractor. Now it would be whatever the recommendation is, using the ground-based spraying, which the product is referred to as BT. It has a scientific name, I can't pronounce it, but it's available to all different providers.
Right. So but whatever these guys come up with in terms of areas to spray, if I heard you correctly, their affiliate would be the one we would hire to do the spraying, right?
That's who we've used in the past.
Okay. But if we're not talking about that they're going to come back and suggest $200,000 worth of spraying.
Certainly hope not.
Okay.
And we could limit
And if so, we need it.
Well, I'm just concerned
Well, I think at that
that you're
point-
hiring somebody to tell you what you need, and then they're the ones that get hired. I mean, so you just got to be
Fair
careful.
enough. Yep, fair enough. But again, at that point then, which I know the board is against, then it comes under consideration, do we really have an infestation where we need to look at aerial spraying? And then at that time, you are talking several $100,000, hopefully utilizing funds from Oakland County. It's kind of a weird place we're in, because we have very little treatment, so we don't get a lot of grant fund reimbursement, which is a good thing that we don't need the treatment.
Yeah, some of those townships that were reaching out to Oakland County wanted aerial spraying of their whole area, and of course, we're in this area not as fond of the aerial spraying, so that limited us.
Yep. Olivia, so is the expectation that by doing a survey on township property and medians on the telegraph, woodwork, et cetera, that's going to give an accurate sample that can be extrapolated to private property?
I think the township is too large to say it's a good representation of what the township at large would be. But hopefully through the education aspect and sharing that information. There is, I believe, part of Oakland County system, and it's been a while, it's been a couple months, but I believe part of Oakland County's program included a reporting phone number for residents to reach out to and report areas, or if they had spongy moth on it, and there was going to be some sort of correlation of the data on behalf of, by Oakland County. But again, our properties, you know, in the proposal, we included, you know, even the medians that we have planted trees on, that the township has made an effort to plant trees on in the medians. We've had cases where we've had to spray the medians for spongy moth, and they were pine trees. So I know, you know, there is a tree that it likes, but we had a significant infestation on medians at the north end of Woodward on pine trees. And we've had residents call in about, you know, the moths being on other types of trees outside of their typical preference.
So I'll just basically my thoughts on this. This has obviously been a problem for a long time in the township. I don't know if it's ever going to go away. I think the most important thing for us to do is educate the community. So like even when we're talking about so few communities are interested in participating, I tend to think that's probably because they don't realize what sort of problem it is. And I think Treasurer Keeps has talked about in the past, if we're remediating but then no one else is, it's sort of, you know, wasted money because we're just going to get the infestation coming from our neighbors. So if everybody knows about it in the county and then people are responsible for their own property, they can keep an eye out, they'll know, they'll see it quicker than the township, the survey, and then the cost is going to be on the homeowner anyway to take care of their own property. And then obviously if we do find it on township property, we would want to care for it as well so that we're good neighbors and not spreading it to other people. So I think we have to, in the past we would send it exclusively to the hot spots. I think it has to be something, at least, you know, we control our communication with our township, right? We can't control what other communities in the township do, but at least if everybody in Bloomfield Township knows this is something that we have something to look out for, I think that can go a lot further than even just treating these small spots, because it's just going to keep spreading.
And that would be the hope with the educational brochure, that's something that could be included in the e-news or other resources that we have where it would go out to the general public versus the, you know, specific letters that we would send. Because when trees were selected for ground-based spraying, we obviously sent a letter to the property owner saying, hey, just so you know, this is going to happen. But then it was like, wait a minute, we should notify the people in that, you know, adjacent to them.
Yeah, no, and I think you're spot on, like something like the e-news, just, and maybe even repeatedly doing it, because some people don't catch any news, maybe they're just looking at it, you know, once every couple months, and then that way they can be alerted to the fact that this is a growing problem and we need everybody's help to try to get it under control.
We were hoping to put it in the newsletter too, because we know that goes to every single
Exactly.
household, and it's already a something we're mailing
Right.
out. So that's why we're hoping that, you know, now we have Carrie, so she might be able to create something for us.
Yes.
Before Carrie, we didn't have anyone, but if the county were to, it's kind of nice to have that uniform message too.
Yeah.
If each group is telling their own communities their own thing versus us in the
Right.
county as a whole.
I
attacking
actually,
it.
I like the suggestion. If we get something from MSU Extension, I'm sure that they have, I mean, I know that they do, because I've even attended programs that they put on about gypsy moth. Just take that and then sort of use the same thing. I mean, they're the authority, I would say, on that.
So we have asked MSU Extension if they have tons of information on their website. And we can send links, you know, no problem. But we asked if they had something concise, like a single page brochure or a flyer, and they didn't at the time when we asked a couple months ago. So that's why we wanted to include in this, making that nice one-page document, you know, to send somebody 12 different links or 5 different links. But there is a lot of information regarding this onto the MSU Extension.
We're hoping, yeah.
I guess, you know, there's a lot of nuances to this spongy moth, as we've kind of learned over the years. And it doesn't, pardon the fun, fly in a straight line. It's a function of cyclicality, it's a function of the rain, it's a function of the wind blowing and all kinds of things. So, you know, and we had a, long-standing relationship with one entity, and I would hope that, we've had actually one, I guess, with Davy in terms of treatment, not necessarily in terms of surveying. So I would just suggest, if we're ready to make a motion, I will, but I guess I would suggest that we also ask them if this is in terms of the time of year, what is the best, most efficient way to do surveying and really deal with this in a all-encompassing way. Because at this point, we've approached them with, we need a survey right now, and I'm just wondering if maybe there are better ways or different times of the year that we could be surveying, and maybe it might be more effective, maybe not, but.
So I do know that fall is the best time because you count the egg masses, and that's when the moths lay them. But in the proposal, they do refer to different alternatives to doing a survey. And it includes, we've fortunately, to my recollection, haven't been in the position where we had significant or notable defoliation, but it does include during surveys in the summer to look at defoliation versus counting egg masses in the fall. So they do recommend considering or discussing other alternatives for a future program, but again, they did respond to what we had asked for, and what we asked for, what we were familiar with and what we knew about. But they do bring up the other alternatives of doing a defoliation survey, looking at other areas or other trends, more of a holistic approach instead of going to the same
Exactly.
25 locations, more looking at, is there defoliation? And so I think it's, certainly getting somebody on board who's knowledgeable would require some sort of contract or agreement, but I think it would, I think as part of, if the board approves this contract, this scope of work, this may evolve into something different for future years.
Good.
Just one last thing. I agree with most of what everyone else said, so I'm not going to repeat it. But, I actually read their entire 25-page proposal. It's really a very thorough document. I was quite impressed by the time they spent in preparing this and responding directly to the RFP materials that we sent out and the concerns that have been identified in prior conversations, which normally I'm concerned we only get one RFP response, but I mean, this was a really great piece of work. They spent a lot of time on it. And so I think it's a good idea. It's also a one-year agreement, so we've got flexibility to adjust it, including with the additional ideas they have for surveys. And on page 18, they do go through and separately call out the costs associated with each of these phases. And of the $19,000, all but $2,100 of it is associated with the survey cost, which maybe the county could pay for. But we have this separate delineation here. And the informational brochure is only $2,100. So I like the idea of having something that's tailored to our community and written in a way to be quickly absorbed, because as we recall from prior conversations, the MSU material and other materials were just so general, it wasn't really that helpful. So it looks like a good idea to me.
Yeah, and I would, hearing today about the county, continuing to look at possible alternatives with the funding program that they have, that is something that if there were to be an opportunity to get reimbursement for part of this, then we would make sure that we were able to delineate that in the billing from the contractor, that we can, if the program were to evolve with the county and something not be included on here, we'd make sure they could separate it so that we can easily identify it in a request for reimbursement. But I guess my only question is, for Commissioner Gershenson, is this scope of work here would be completed by January. And if there is to be changes to the program that are approved by the county commissioners, would that take place this January? Just because we want this focused on the survey.
Take place before the end of our term, which is December 10th. So it would happen this year.
That's great news.
And then since you spearheaded this, would you
Okay.
like to make the motion?
Be happy to make a motion to approve the motion as proposed by Olivia and subject to review by our attorney.
Motion by Treasurer Keeps.
And I'll support, and certainly even more so due to Commissioner Gershenson's presentation and the opportunities that we may have for reimbursement, both for survey costs and educational costs. So thank you.
Support by Trustee Barnett. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? That does pass. Thank you, Commissioner Gershenson.
Thank you.
Thank you.